Good morning, and thank you for that introduction. I'm very glad to be here, very impressed by this process of deliberative democracy. I'm Gilda Sedgh. I'm here from the Guttmacher Institute. We are a non-government organization based in New York. Our mission is to conduct research in support of evidence-based policies and programs on sexual and reproductive health. In the interest of transparency, the position of the Institute is in support of legal abortion. My purpose here is to present objective evidence with respect to what we know about the incidence, trends, and legal status of abortion around the world. And so first, in the first section, I'll present our findings and estimates of the incidence of abortion. And these findings are based on work we did in collaboration with the World Health Organization and colleagues at a number of universities in Asia and Europe and in North America. So we estimate in that article that Justice Lafoy just referenced that as of 2010 to 2014, about 56 million women have an abortion on average in each year. And that represents a slight increase from the early 1990s when about 50 million abortions were taking place each year. And the number of abortions can increase as the size of the population and the numbers of women of reproductive age increase over time. And so it can be more meaningful to look at the number of abortions that take place for every 1,000 women of reproductive age. In this way, we control for population size and population growth. And that's what we do here. And so we estimate that there are about 35 abortions for every 1,000 women of reproductive age as of 2010 to 2014 per year. And that represents a small decrease from the early 1990s when the rate was about 40. So a rate of 35 means that, just very roughly speaking, about 3.5% of women of childbearing age, that's women 15 to 44 years old, have an abortion each year. And when we look separately at trends in the developed world and in the developing world, we see different patterns. In the developed world, the abortion rate has actually declined quite considerably from about 46 to 27 abortions per 1,000 women. And in the developing world, the abortion rate has not really changed substantially. And now, unlike in the early 1990s, the abortion rate is higher in the developing world than in the developed world. Because of this, and even more so because most of the world's population lives in the developing world, about 88% of all abortions worldwide take place in the developing world. And so here we look at abortion trends in some of the major parts of the developed world, primarily North America and Europe. And because the pattern in Eastern Europe is quite distinct, we pull that out and look at Eastern and non-Eastern Europe separately. And what you can see right off is that the abortion rate really has declined the most dramatically in Eastern Europe, where abortion incidence was really quite high in the early 1990s. And remember, that's very soon after the Soviet era. And in the Soviet era in Eastern Europe, women largely did not have access to and were not using modern methods of contraception. And since the 1990s, the numbers of women using modern methods has increased considerably. The abortion rate is still fairly high in Eastern Europe, and this is in part because the use of modern methods, the effective use of methods, is not quite as prevalent or as consistent in Eastern Europe as in these other parts of the developed world. And another point to take from this slide is that the abortion rates are fairly low in North America and non-Eastern Europe and have been fairly steady over time, although they have decreased slightly. And so in addition to looking at the proportion of women who have an abortion, we look at the proportion of pregnancies that end in abortion. And the percent of all pregnancies ending in abortion has been declining in the developed world and has been increasing in the developing world. But in both of these parts of the world, and with respect to the global average as well, about 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in abortion. And so now here we are not looking at trends over time in the incidence of abortion, but rather abortion rates in the recent time period in different groups of countries. And here the y-axis label is a little bit has been truncated, it's incomplete. But here we're looking at the abortion rates in countries on the far left where abortion is prohibited altogether or allowed only to save a woman's life. And the point on that far left bar indicates that on average across these countries, the abortion rate is 37 per thousand. On the far right, in the group of countries where abortion is available on request, the abortion rate is about 34 per thousand. And the vertical lines going with each bar are meant to convey, when you compare these lines across the different groups of countries, that these differences are not what we call statistically significant. We were also able to estimate the global incidence of abortion for married women and unmarried women separately. The United Nations Population Division defines marriage to include living in a partnership. So married women include those who are living with a partner. And the abortion rate is higher among married women than among unmarried women. It's 36 for marrieds and 25 for unmarried women globally. And in the developed world, the rates are 33 and 18. Some things do get lost when we change the aspect ratio. Yeah. But I hope that the points are still coming across. And here, each pair of numbers adds up to 100%. And what we're looking at here is a percent of all abortions that are being obtained by married compared to unmarried women. And about 73% of all abortions worldwide are obtained by married women. And in the developed world, about 69% are obtained by married women. We don't have global estimates of the abortion rates in women in different age groups, but we compiled the evidence from the European countries that do compile these data. And across these 8 European countries, somewhere from 9 to 18% of all abortions are obtained by adolescents, that is, females who are 15 to 19 years old. In Scotland, it's about 18%, and in Norway and Estonia, it's about 10% of all abortions that are being obtained by adolescents. We also have compiled, and I didn't prepare a slide, we have compiled the incidence of abortion, the numbers of abortions obtained by women who have had at least one child and women who have not had any children. And in these countries, more than half of abortions are obtained by women who have had at least one child. And we also have some information on the reasons why women give for having abortions from a few countries, and we can get into that if there's interest in the Q&A. So now we'll shift gears, and instead of looking at the numbers of abortions and the characteristics of women who have abortions, we're just going to spend a few slides looking at how the countries in the world fall in terms of their abortion laws. And again, there's a bit of truncation of the words, but I'll walk you through these different bars. So of the world's 199 countries and territories and populous jurisdictions, abortion is not allowed for any reason whatsoever in 28 countries. Abortion is allowed to save a woman's life in 37 countries. That includes Ireland. And it is allowed to preserve a woman's physical health, and in some of these countries also to preserve a woman's mental health in 59 countries. And then it is allowed either without restriction as to reason or for social or economic reasons in 74 countries. The UK is in that group where it's allowed for social or economic reasons. And in some of these countries where abortion is not allowed for any reason or is only allowed to save a woman's life, there are variations with respect to whether abortion is allowed in cases of rape or incest or fetal abnormality. And in some of the countries where abortion is allowed, classified as being allowed without restriction, there are, in many of them, limits on the gestational age at which a woman may obtain an abortion. There are sometimes requirements that adolescents get parental consent. There are different regulations that lead to a lot of variation across these countries. So it's important to know that and to not think that there's homogeneity or this similarity in each of these 4 groups of countries. And now we look just at the developed world, and in the 46 countries in the developed world, abortion is not allowed for any reason in 3 countries. It's allowed to save a woman's life in Ireland, the one country there. It's allowed to preserve her physical health, and in some cases also her mental health in 5 countries. And it's allowed without restriction as to reason or for social or economic reasons in 37 countries. So we just added Ireland, but you guys know where Ireland is better than anyone right now. And if you're interested in knowing which countries fall in each of these categories, they're listed here. So these are the countries in the developed world. Abortion is not allowed for any reason in Andorra, Malta, or San Marino. It is allowed to preserve her physical health, and in some cases, her mental health in New Zealand, Northern Ireland, Liechtenstein, Monaco, and Poland. And again, there are differences in how these laws are interpreted and applied. So for example, in New Zealand, abortion is fairly widely available, not so in Poland or Northern Ireland. And it is allowed on request or for social or economic reasons in the rest of Europe and in Australia, Canada, and the United States. And lastly, we'll look at countries that have changed their abortion laws in this 20-year span from 1994 to 2014. And in this span of time, about 36 countries have made changes to their abortion laws. 34 have moved to more liberal abortion laws, and 2 have moved to more narrow grounds for legal abortion. Those 2 are Nicaragua and El Salvador. In the developed world, 6 countries have moved toward more expansive grounds for legal abortion, and none at present have moved toward more restrictive grounds. So you can see that really law change has been taking place even more so in the developing world than in the developed world. And for some of those countries, the history to that is that in many of those developing countries, they have on their books the laws from the colonial era, and the colonizing countries have changed their abortion laws, and the developing countries are gradually over time following suit. That doesn't explain all of those law changes, but it explains some of them. So these are the countries that have changed their abortion laws in the past 6 years. The 6 countries in 20 years: Albania, Switzerland, Portugal, Monaco, Spain, and Luxembourg. And if you end up in the Q&A asking for detailed questions about these countries, they are more than welcome, and I will be rustling through papers to answer some of those detailed questions. This is not work that I've been closely involved in. And then lastly, as I mentioned earlier, even within a certain group of countries with a particular law, there are lots of variations with respect to the regulations that go along with those laws. Are there counseling requirements, waiting periods, parental consent laws, and such? And so some countries have made changes with respect to their regulations that have changed the level of access to legal abortion for women in these countries. And 3 countries have moved toward enhancing access to legal abortion, and 6 or 7 countries have moved toward, largely in Eastern Europe and also in Germany, toward restricting access to legal abortion. So for example, in Russia, after 12 weeks of gestation, there are fewer reasons why conditions under which a woman may legally obtain an abortion. And in a number of these countries, there are now required waiting periods. So that's the bird's eye view of incidence and characteristics of women and legal status of abortion across these countries. And we're available for questions and answers after the set of presentations. And thank you for your time.